Yep. Okay, good. All right. Well, as Krista said, I'm Adam Chen-Dedman, and I oversee the global programming, in particular our study abroad and away programs, as well as international students that we have on campus at Center College. Tonight, I'm going to do a sort of overview of the different kinds of study abroad and away programs. And when I say away, I mean domestic, so programs that are either in New York City or in Washington, D.C. Um, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the faculty-led programs that we offer, and then I'll leave time at the end for questions. I think some of you want to know about scholarships and funding and things like that. So I'll try to, there's a lot of information here. So, you may feel a bit overwhelming. We can circulate this PowerPoint later. It's up on CenterNet as well for those who'd like to reference it. So without further ado, I think I will share my screen here. Krista, do I have sharing? I think, yeah, okay. All right, let me just, okay. Let's see, can everyone see this okay? Can you see it? Yep, okay, great. So I'll start off a little bit about talking about what we're doing at the moment. So as you know, today was the last day of our center term. This month, we had 228 students from Center who were in different locations around the world and one location here in the United States. As you can see there, we had places in Asia and Africa, Central America, all over Europe, yeah, and Latin America. So our center term faculty-led courses abroad are kind of the bread and butter, so to speak, of how most center students would go abroad. So typically, these would be a 3-week course and either one or two, sometimes even 3 or 4 faculty, depending on the number of students, would lead a course. All the center term courses are taught by center faculty. They're transcripted as center courses. They're just taught off campus. And most of our students have already returned from overseas. I think we have another group coming back tomorrow from Mexico, and then all the students should be back. So important dates right now. January is not only center term, but it's also the sort of peak of study abroad in a way application season here. So for the upcoming academic year, 24-25 academic year, the applications for study abroad will close a week from tomorrow on February 2nd. I think they officially close at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the applications must be done online through CenterNet. So your student, if they're interested in applying and haven't done so already, they can find the applications there. Just to clarify, there are 2 separate applications. One is for center term or summer term programs. Those are our faculty-led programs, and there's a separate application for our semester program. So if a student wanted to go abroad in the fall or spring, that's a separate. Or if they want to apply to both, they can as well. They just need to fill out 2 different applications because they're vetted differently. There's also a link on our website that lists all of the important dates, including deadlines, things like that. So don't feel like you have to take all notes. We can circulate this. This is kind of a screenshot here of what it looks like when a student would log into CenterNet. There on the kind of left-hand corner, you'll see Center Online Forms where it says Start a New Form. They would click on that and they would be able to select either study abroad or center term to choose what kind of program they want to apply to. So without further ado, maybe I'll just talk a little bit about the different kinds of programs we run. So in terms of our semester programs, we have programs all over the world. We have 2 here in the United States, New York City and Washington, D.C. Those programs are primarily internship focused. So the students would do full-time internships, usually 35 to 40 hours a week. And then they would take 2 courses in the evening. So there's 2 evenings a week where they have class. They would get 6 credits for their full-time internship. So in total, it'd be 12 credits of full load. We also have programs, of course, across Europe, Asia. We have a collaborative program with Sewanee College and Rhodes College in Africa, as well as one with them in Ecuador. So there are lots of different options in terms of location. We have 2 new programs that were just approved this past semester. One is in Taiwan. That is a Mandarin language immersion program, as well as a new German language immersion program in Erlangen in Bavaria. So those are just the locations, but this will hopefully give you, I know there's a lot of text there, but hopefully it'll give you a sense of the different kinds of programs. When students think about studying abroad, I think oftentimes they're overwhelmed with the number of choices. How do these programs differ? So really kind of these are sort of the big classifications. We have immersion programs. So those would be courses that we have designated primarily for the 4 language majors that we have on campus. That'd be German, Spanish, French, and Mandarin Chinese. So these locations here would be for students who want to focus exclusively on language learning. We also have a number of programs elsewhere in the world where students would take a language of the host country, a course, one language course, and then they would take the other 2 or 3 courses, usually in English on different topics. Some programs, for example, in Strasbourg and Mexico and London, we call those our flagship programs. When we say flagship program, we just mean that these are programs that Center has been invested in for decades. Most of our flagship programs go back 2 or 3 decades. They're also all led by Center faculty. So while most students who go abroad with Center faculty tend to do so in the Center term or summer term, we also have 3 programs where a faculty member or 2 are teaching Center students abroad for an entire semester. That is, again, is our London, Strasbourg, and Merida, Mexico. We also have programs which we call direct enroll. Those are primarily courses in countries that speak English as their primary language. Usually it's United Kingdom for the most part. We also have our program in Ghana, West Africa, where English is the language of instruction. These programs, they're all kind of different shapes. So our London program, like I said, is taught by faculty. Rose Bruford is a theater college outside of London. So that program is primarily for our theater and performing arts majors. Our Northern Ireland program is actually a consortium that Center is part of. So we work with 4 different universities in Northern Ireland. We exchange students through a consortium. Glasgow in Scotland and the University of Reading, these are direct enroll programs. So our students would directly enroll in the local university. For students who are in perhaps Division 3 or STEM sort of majors, oftentimes Glasgow and Reading tend to be some of the more popular locations because they can take courses in chemistry, biology, computer science, things like this more readily than other locations. If they are a intermediate to advanced Spanish speaker, our program in Marista in Mexico, there are also courses in computer science and the hard sciences that are taught in Spanish. So we also talk about the levels of independence in our office in terms of how students might want to conceptualize or think about the different kinds of programs. So we have some programs that are very hands-on in the sense of these are courses that our professors lead. They're going in groups of sort of group of students from Center, usually anywhere from 10 to 30 students. And those are, like I said, very hands-on. It's a kind of a similar environment to what they might expect in Center in terms of the classroom. Their courses would all be transcribed as Center courses. And I think for a lot of students who are perhaps reticent or anxious about going abroad, maybe they've never been abroad before, maybe they haven't traveled or for whatnot, I think oftentimes these programs are sort of a soft landing. And so we encourage students to think about the different kinds of programs and what sort of experience they want to have, but also what kind of educational goals they have. So we have a number of exchange programs. When I say exchange program, it just means that we exchange students back and forth. So Royal Thimphu College in Bhutan, for example, we have Bhutanese students on campus here at Center College, and then we send our students there. Yamaguchi in Japan and Akita in Japan, these are 2 different universities we work with. We have their students here. We have, like I said, a number of direct enrolled programs. Those are programs where they would not be sending our students, but they would not be sending us students, but we send students to them. And then we work with a number of third-party providers in China, in Spain, in Germany, and in France. So those are where our students are either studying in a language institute or alongside a university, but we work with other organizations to organize those. So I'll just go through this really quickly because it's a lot of information. This is our new program in Erlangen, Germany. Like I said, it is primarily an immersion program. Students have to have at least intermediate German to go on it. We run this in collaboration with Kalamazoo College in Michigan. And also to keep in mind, I'm not going to go into great detail about the dates, but different countries have different academic calendars. So most of our programs generally start around more or less following the center academic calendar, but some programs don't. And one in particular that's quite different is our program in Germany. So students going to Germany start in March, and then they would come back in July. And that's because that is the German academic calendar. So students who go on this program, they would take center term in January, and they would basically have the month of February off before they go to Germany for their spring semester. Akita Japan, this is a quite interesting program. It's Akita International University, so it's in northern Japan, quite a rural area, but it is a university that's entirely taught in English. It's extremely international. It's quite small. It's about half the size of Center. There's 700 students. We had 2 students from Center there this past fall, but they offer a lot of courses in English, which is somewhat unique in Japan. Northern Ireland program. This is only for juniors and seniors. This program is part of what we call the Irish American Scholar Program. It's a quite competitive program. And that's another point I should probably make is that different programs have different requirements in terms of being admitted. Some programs are really popular and we always have more applicants than we do spots. We encourage students to apply for more than one program because depending on the location, they may or may not get their first pick. So in the CenterNet application, they can apply for up to 3 semester programs or up to 5 center term programs. Bhutan, as I said, is an exchange program. This is pretty unique. There's not that many universities working in Bhutan. Bhutan, if you're familiar, is known for what's called gross national happiness. It's a Buddhist kingdom. Our students, in fact, I was told a few months ago that our students there this fall were able to meet the king of Bhutan at a cultural event they went to. So, it's quite a unique experience to be in a country and to meet the royal family. But this is a program we've had going for about 5 years now. This is our new program in Taiwan that I referenced. It's based at National Taiwan University. NTU is the premier university in Taiwan. We offer 2 options for students. We created this program primarily to offer a language immersion program for students either majoring or minoring in Chinese. But NTU is also a huge university that has a lot of courses offered in English too. So if a student is not necessarily a Chinese major, but they're interested in learning about sort of Chinese-speaking societies, if they're interested in taking courses, you can take courses in computer science and all other kinds of subjects in English as well. So there are 2 different options at National Taiwan University. Shanghai in the People's Republic of China. This program is run by IFSA Butler, which is an academic exchange provider based out of Butler University in Indianapolis. This is not an immersion program, so if students are interested in taking courses about business, social sciences in China, this might be an option for them. Yamaguchi, Japan, Mexico, this is the program I talked about, which is our language immersion program. Yamaguchi is one of the oldest partners of Center. It's been around for about 20 plus years. It's sort of in the southern part of the main island of Japan. Very different kind of environment, educationally speaking, than Akita International University. Students do not have to speak Japanese. I think that's important to note to go to either of these programs. Although the Akita program tends to offer a broader variety of courses in English than Yamaguchi. This is our program in Washington, D.C. It's a pretty cool program, like I said, because it's internship oriented. The two courses they take, one is on art and architecture of Washington. The professor takes them around to all different kinds of museums and historic sites. The other course they take is called the Congressional Experience. It's taught by a congressional staffer, and it really teaches them how Congress works. The internship component is run in partnership with our CCPD, our Center for Career and Professional Development. But the internship, we don't guarantee a particular internship, but the CCPD works with students to help them try to find a location. To give you an example, we have one student there currently this semester who has a very coveted internship at the State Department. So if students are really thinking strategically and want to get some of these high-powered internships in Washington, D.C., they tend to have to think early because a lot of these internship applications for the FBI, for government agencies, there's background checks, it's a long process, but they're pretty impressive, internship opportunities to put on a student's resume. New York City, apart from the internship, we also have two courses. One pretty awesome course called New York Theater Experience. And we had 5 students there this past fall. And one of the interesting things that none of our students who were there were theater majors. Most of them were either social science, or we even had a computer science major. And they all absolutely loved this course because they learn about the impact of theater and Broadway on New York City. They get to go to 8 to 9 different Broadway shows. It's pretty incredible. The other course, New York and its Peoples, Past and Present, is taught by the official historian of Manhattan. This professor is amazing. He knows absolutely everything about Manhattan, and students, I think it's a good mix of kind of learning about New York City and it being a melting pot. And so, but we often advise students that if you think you might be more interested in sort of business, those kinds of internships, New York City might be a better option, but clearly Washington, D.C. would be a great option for students interested in government or policy type internships. University of Reading, as I mentioned. Also, I should be clear that not every program runs every semester. Some programs only run in the fall, some only run in the spring, and some run fall and spring. So our program at Reading runs in the fall, and then the University of Glasgow is our program in the spring. So there's always an option in the United Kingdom. It just, the semester varies. This is the theater program I mentioned that's located just outside of London. Glasgow is also a very popular program. University of Glasgow is a world-class university. Thousands of courses that students can take, but it's also a very competitive program. We currently have about 12 students there this semester, but we tend to get a lot more applications. So if a student really wants to go to Reading or Glasgow, we often encourage them to maybe apply early, apply as a sophomore. And if they don't get it, try applying again as a junior, because we have a ranking system and a vetting system. We try to prioritize students both in terms of have they been abroad before, how close are they to graduation, what's their GPA. So there's a whole system in terms of how they get ranked after they apply. Nantes, this is our French language immersion program that I mentioned. Alicante, Spain is a program we run in collaboration with Keys. That's a consortium here in Kentucky. We have 3 students. This is our first time running it. We have 3 students there from Center this semester. The flagship programs I mentioned are those programs in Mexico, London, and France that are run by our faculty members. Just to give you kind of a heads up of who's going to be teaching these next year. Our center in London, this happens every spring. Next spring, we will have Dr. Carrie Palmy, who is a chemistry professor, and Dr. Bruce Johnson, who is a professor of economics. These are the courses they will be teaching. The students live in beautiful housing right smack in the middle of London. We work with Florida State University. They own a huge building in the middle of London, and our students live there, and the faculty live just down the street. So it's really convenient, an awesome location. Center in Strasbourg, I think many of you probably heard of this program. Strasbourg has been around for a long time. We often have students who tell us that their parents went to Strasbourg when they were at Center. So Currently, this year, it's being taught by Dr. Marc Demont, who is from our French department. But next academic year, Dr. Mark Rasmussen, who is a professor of English. He has led Strasbourg many times. I think this will be his fifth time leading the program. So students would take either one of two courses that is taught by our faculty member, then they would take a French language class and they would test. So if they've never learned French before, they would just go into beginning French. If they've taken French before, they would do a placement exam and then be put into the appropriate level. And then apart from that, there are a number of other elective courses that are taught by local faculty that students can choose from. Global Ghana, this is a program that we run, like I said, in partnership with Rhodes and Sewanee. So this program in the fall of 2024 is being taught by Dr. Abu Bakar Mama from Rhodes College. And these are the courses he'll be teaching. We work together with a local organization. All the students do homestays. There's internship options. Just to give you a heads up, fall of 2025, I know that's about more than a year and a half away. One of our center professors, Dr. Johan van Niekerk from our music program, will be leading the program. So what we do in this consortium is we rotate faculty from Sewanee, Rhodes, and Center to teach every year. Faculty-led programs coming up this summer. We have a studio art. This is called Image and Vessel. It's a program really focusing on ceramics and photography. So summer term has never really been that popular at Center. Some of you are probably aware that Center is launching an official summer term beginning this year. We've always had a smattering of courses offered abroad, but we're trying to encourage faculty to think about offering summer courses, but most of our faculty tend to lead their their courses abroad in center term. We have another program in Denmark and Sweden being taught by two different professors. This is about Scandinavian approaches to environmentalism. It's one of our more expensive programs, largely because Scandinavia is not cheap. Yeah. And the course, just to explain, all the center term and the summer term courses, those are not part of the comprehensive fee that students pay. So, but the fee does include flight, so their travel is included, their accommodation, certain meals, the credits, all of that is included in these short courses, right? So most of these summer and center term courses are typically 3 weeks long. So next year, exactly a year from now, January next year, we have a lot of courses that faculty are leading. Dr. Werner is leading a sustainable development course to Thailand. He's done this course before. One of our new professors in the religion program, who is from Korea, Dr. Bosco Bay, he's going to be teaching a course about spirituality and ceramics. He's also a ceramicist himself. Dr. Katrine Barr from the German Studies program and Dr. Meili Inoue from the Chinese Studies program. This is actually an interesting collaboration. They're going to be looking at women in history in Berlin, but looking at it in a multicultural lens. So it's being taught by a professor of German and a professor of Chinese Studies, but in Berlin. So this is a new course that has not been taught before. And typically, because the center term courses rotate. That means sometimes a professor may offer a course multiple times, but sometimes a course may only be offered once. Dr. Bruce Rodenborn, who is from our physics program, is going to be leading this course on art, science, and the Renaissance. He's done this before. It's a rather popular program. London and Glasgow, this is being taught by Dr. Zach Klobnak from our music program. This is really around it's sort of a music appreciation course. They'll be going to a music festival in Glasgow, going to different concerts in London, a new course that I think will be pretty popular. Dr. Joe Workman, who's been at Centre College for many, many years, he has taught this program in New Zealand several times. This is a volcanoes program. So the two professors here are both in the chemistry program. So I think you can probably get a sense here that our center term programs are taught by faculty from lots of different disciplines. And so in that sense, they're, if a student is interested in the sciences or, more sort of cultural issues, we have lots of different options. Senegal and the Gambia, Dr. Jean Fay from our environmental studies program. He just returned last night with students from Senegal and the Gambia. We had, I believe, 12 students this year, and he'll be offering that course again next year. So it's a course looking at disease and sort of environmental health in West Africa. Dr. Christian Wood, who is a professor in French studies, part of his family is actually from Tahiti, so he has very strong connections to the island, and he's taken center students several times to Tahiti, and he'll be offering a new course on sort of mindfulness and yoga next year. Dr. Sarah Eggy and Dr. Tara Stroud will be offering a course in New York City and Puerto Rico. Some of you may be aware there's a large Puerto Rican community in New York City, and so they'll be spending a few days there and then spending the rest of the center term in Puerto Rico. Dr. Robert Shalkoff, who lived in Japan and Yamaguchi for over 25 years. He will be leading a pilgrimage course. So we actually have two different pilgrimage courses going next center term. This should be a pretty, he's done this course before. Dr. Shalkoff's wife is from Japan. She'll be going with the group as well. But it's not for the faint-hearted. There is a lot of walking and hiking involved in this course. They travel some pretty historic pilgrimage routes, and they go kind of several different areas in Western Japan. There's another program, so I don't have the slide because the professor is on sabbatical, but Dr. David Hall, who is in our religion program, he'll be leading another pilgrimage program to Spain, and he's done this course several times before. So I'll just kind of wrap up there. I think many of you know that study abroad is in the sort of DNA of center. On average, 85% to 90% of our students go abroad at least once during their 4 years. Some students go abroad multiple times. I think we've had one student go up to 7 times. But you know, there's lots of different sort of factors involved. Of course, there's costs, obviously. We try to find ways to make that work for students. There is location, there's timing, there's competitive programs versus programs that are not as competitive. So there's lots of different sort of factors to keep in mind. But I often tell students, don't wait till the last minute. If you don't plan in advance, you probably won't get into the program that you want to. I had a first-year student come in to my office, I think the second week of coming to center, talking about where he wanted to go his junior year. That's the kind of student we like to see who really is thinking ahead about and being very intentional about where they want to go and how they want that experience to play out. So I will kind of leave it at that. I've gone on for almost half an hour, and I'll open it up to questions. So thank you for being so attentive.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. We have gotten a couple of questions, so I'll just start kind of ticking off down the list and let you answer and then read another one. So first, we have a question about, can you explain a little bit how the housing works for the rest of the academic year? If a student, for instance, goes abroad in the fall, what happens with their housing for center term and spring term?
Yeah. So the housing, typically if they were to go abroad for an entire semester, like the spring, then they would move out of their accommodation on campus. If they are staying on campus for center term, so they're going abroad, let's say in the fall. And so I think the other keep in mind, when a lot of programs have different sort of end dates, starting and end dates. So some programs that go abroad in the fall don't actually come back until January. So not every program, again, is run at the same time. So for those kinds of programs like Yamaguchi, for example, our students who went to Yamaguchi back in September, they came back to the States this week. So they cannot obviously take a center term course. And they would enter their housing again on campus next week when the spring term starts. If they were to go abroad, let's say in the spring, then they would need to move, depending on whether or not some students will go abroad during a center term and then directly go abroad for the semester. So we've had a number of students who, I think we have one student this semester who went to Turkey for center term and then is going directly onto the program in London. So we work with the students, but really the housing component is done through the residential life office. So we don't get involved that much in the housing, but students, depending on when their program comes back and whether or not they're going on center term abroad, the residential life works with them to figure out their housing.
Okay. So essentially, if I'm getting that correctly, then that whatever their next term that they're enrolled in is when they would move back into student housing,
Yes.
depending on when they okay.
So if they were to go abroad in the fall and they're coming back on campus for center term, then they would be able to move
For center
in
term. Okay.
center term. But sometimes, like I said, some students will be away. Like we had a student who went abroad to Japan last fall, went directly to Spain for a center term, and then is coming back now for
For
the
spring
spring. So
term. Okay.
it just really depends on the students.
When they return to campus for classes officially. Okay. Are first year students eligible for center term study abroad programs?
Typically, no. And that is because we recruit for center term a year in advance. So they wouldn't even be a student at center when we're recruiting for their first center term. The only exception to that is every 3 years, the music program offers a choir trip. So we just had 25 students in Spain this month. They returned, I think, on Monday. And in 3 years, so what is that, 2027, there'll be another choir center term trip. And there are always a number of spots that are reserved for first year students, but they have to audition and whatnot when they arrive. But that's the only exception because typically all of our center term programs are already filled in the spring before the first year students arrive.
What about their summer after their first year?
Yes, they can study
They
abroad.
can. Okay. Um, oh gosh, they just moved. What are the out-of-pocket costs for a fall spring semester above normal tuition, room and board?
So all of the fall and spring are semester long programs. There's no additional cost except for the cost of their flight. So if a student were to go to center in London, for example, they would just pay for their airfare over. And of course, if there's any visas involved, there's not a visa involved in the United Kingdom, but some places like Japan or Bhutan or whatnot, they have to get visas, right? Student visas. So the cost of the visa and the cost of travel is not included, but they do not pay anything beyond whatever they're paying to center, whatever their financial aid or their scholarships are, all of that carries with them. But that's, of course, as I said earlier, is center term and summer term, because those are outside of the regular sort of semester system. Those are a separate cost.
This, I'm sure, plays into your discussion about making sure they plan ahead, but how do students make sure that they get the classes they are required for graduation and for their major while studying abroad?
Yep, that's a great question. So um, all courses that are taken abroad on an approved program will by default transfer back to center as an elective. Now, the exception to that is if it's a center-run program. So if it's center in London, if it's center in Strasbourg, or it's center in Mexico, all of those are directly transcripted as center courses. So those, for example, if they're taking Dr. Palmi's Weapons of Mass Destruction course in London, they would get some kind of science credit for that. So, but if they're taking a course at a university abroad that's not taught by a center professor, then by default, that course would transfer back as an elective. However, if a student wants to have that transfer back towards either a general ed requirement or a major requirement, there's a petition process. So certain programs like Glasgow or Reading, where we've had lots of students go, if there's a course at Reading, for example, that a center student has taken before and had it transfer back towards a particular major, that is on file with the registrar. So they don't have to petition if it's a course that's already been approved. But if they do want to take a course, let's say at University of Glasgow, that no other center student has ever taken before, and they want it to count towards their business major or whatever, they have to petition for that. So basically there's a petition form and they have to get the chair of whatever program they're trying to get it to count towards has to sign off on it. If they want it to count towards a general ed requirement, there's a petition form for that. But like I said, typically, that doesn't apply to center-led courses. So it doesn't apply to any kind of center term course or any of our flagship courses. It's only when they're courses that are not taught by center faculty. Does that help? That makes sense.
Can you talk a little bit more about the selection process for the programs? For instance, if a student wants to participate in multiple center term study abroad programs, are they able to do that, or does it start to mark against them? Because you mentioned that, kind of how it weighs in when you've gone abroad already and all.
So it doesn't necessarily weigh against them per se. It just depends on the how many applicants there are to a particular program. So let's say, for example, if there were 30 applicants that wanted to go to University of Glasgow in the spring, and a student had already been abroad 3 times, and then we had a bunch of applicants who had never been abroad, then they may be ranked slightly higher than that. But it doesn't mean that just because they've been abroad before, they're going to lower their chances of being able to go in a different program. But that's not how it works. So it's not a, there's multiple factors involved. It's their GPA, it's their faculty recommendation letters, it's their have they been abroad before or not? Um, there's kind of a science to how it works. But for, just to clarify, for center, any faculty-led program, whether that be a center term course or a summer term course, the faculty vet the applications. We do not do that. So the faculty, because they're going with the students overseas, they are the ones who get to choose which students from the applicant pool they take. However, that's not the case for the semester programs. Any of our fall and spring programs where the students go abroad for an entire semester, we have an off-campus programs committee that meets every month. It's made up of faculty and staff. And we have subcommittees that vet all of these semester programs. So any student that wanted to go abroad, for example, to Glasgow, would be vetted through that committee. And that's going to be happening really soon. Like I said, next Friday is the deadline for applications. Then students have another week to get the faculty recommendation letters in. And then we will vet the applications. And then the week of February 19th to the 23rd, notifications will go out to all the students about whether or not they were accepted. And then they have until the end of February to accept or not. They don't have to accept if they've changed their mind. And then their deposit for their program abroad is due the first week of March.
If I unmuted myself, it would help. Okay. Um, One of the questions was, when will they be notified? So for this coming one, you've mentioned that in general, roughly around when will they find out for, like, does that include summer and all of next year's
The
trip?
summer is a little bit earlier
Okay.
because summer programs are happening really soon. Those courses they're leaving right after commencement. So I think they leave like the week of May 20th. So though the summer program students, the priority deadline is already passed. It
Okay.
was December 31st. There are a few summer programs where there's a few spots left. If students are really interested, they can still apply. But the notifications for center term for next year, fall 2024 and spring 2025 will all go out the week of February 19th.
Okay. And do students get some sort of confirmation email after all of their materials are submitted on the
Through
system? Do
through
you know?
CenterNet, they should be able to see whether or
See it
not
all.
they're application. So they should be able to see, is it pending or has it been submitted?
Okay.
So there's, for students who want to go abroad for a fall or a spring, they're required to submit 2 recommendation letters, either from a faculty advisor, or a professor they've taken, or if a staff person, maybe they're doing a work study on campus, their supervisor, if they're not faculty, that's fine too, they can submit it. But students do not have to submit recommendation letters for the short-term courses. So center term and summer do not require that. It's only for the semester programs.
Okay. I'm reading back through, but I think we have covered all of the questions that I've gotten submitted, unless anybody
I
else
think there
has
was a
anything.
question that you sent me about scholarships and who's
Oh, yes, yes, the
uh,
scholarships and funding, if you could go over
yeah.
that. Yes.
So there's a couple of answers to this. There's both internal and external funding. So on the external side, the big funding for study abroad is a US government-run program called the Gilman International Scholarship. If you've never heard about Gilman before, it's a fantastic program that's been around for about 20 years. Now, the caveat is because it's about creating equity and access. Students have to be Pell Grant recipients. So if your student is a Pell Grant recipient, they are eligible to apply. The State Department allocates roughly 3,000 scholarships a year across the country. Typically, 1 in 4 applicants are awarded, so it's somewhat competitive, but it's not super competitive. But it's great funding. It's basically a lump sum of $5,000 that students can do whatever they want with towards a study abroad program. We had one student at Center this past fall who got a Gilman to go to Germany this coming spring. We have a number of students who are applying at the moment. But Gilman is a fantastic program. It's really great to put on a resume if you get one. There are 2 application periods every year. One is in October and one is in March. So they just opened the application window. I think they opened the portal a week ago, and it'll be open until March 7th. That's for this coming summer, fall, and next spring. So if your student is a Pell Grant recipient and they want to go abroad, this coming fall, or they want to go abroad in center term, they should really consider applying for a Gilman. There's going to be a Gilman info session on Zoom for center students on February 2nd. I think that's next Friday. Dr. Shalkoff, who's the director of fellowships at Center, he'll be doing that. And then we're even going to, in late February, we're going to have a writing workshop to help students who want to craft their essays for a Gilman scholarship. Apart from that, there are a number of other external scholarships that if you go onto our website, we have a list of all different kinds of external funding bodies that students can consider applying to. Internally, our center manages about $140,000 on average every year that we allocate towards scholarships. Most of those are from endowed funds. A number of really generous alumni have donated towards different kinds of funding. Some of those funds are earmarked very specifically to certain kinds of students, depending on the donor's wishes. I would say the majority of those are focused on helping students who have high financial need. Some of them are based on where a student is from, or if they're part of Greek life. There's kinds of different, you can actually go on our website and it delineates all the different categories. Apart from that, we also have what we call a senior subsidy. So we really want to help rising seniors who have never been abroad before be able to have that experience before they go. So we earmark a certain number of a certain amount of money every year towards those students. So typically the internal funding, because we try to allocate as much as we can across several hundred students, I'd say the average award is somewhere between $500 to $1,500. And that's based often on need or academic merit. There's different ways that gets kind of vetted. But our internal funds are not meant to completely fund a program, but they're meant to help offset the cost.
All right, fantastic. I have not gotten any other questions. So last call on questions. If you've got one, submit it real quick. I will say that I'll try and get with Adam. I'll do more than try. I will get in touch with Adam tomorrow and get the information on this Gilman Zoom and post it to our family's Facebook page if anybody wants to make sure to share that with their student.
Yeah, I highly
Get that in
recommend
front
it.
of them. All righty. Well, then, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Adam, very much. I appreciate it. I
Sure.
told Kyle, we were texting while this was going on. I have a rising high school senior who I'm trying to persuade to come to Center College, and she wants to study abroad in Spain. So I'm going to rush home and tell her about
That
that
program's
Alicante program that I did not realize we have because she'll be very excited about that. So it's been very informational for me and hopefully everyone else. Everyone have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.